2020, a year of despair, disappointment, and disaster. Over the course of 12 months in a brand new decade, things went from bad to dreadful to my god, could things get any worse? But one question remains unclear. Did anything good come out of 2020? Well, Cliff Richard brought out a new album to celebrate his 80th birthday. So no, nothing good came out of 2020. Hello there and welcome to 2020 The Lowlights. My name is James, and over the course of this special news programme, I will be presenting the lowest of lows at the start of this dreadful decade. Now, where shall we start? Where shall we start indeed? I feel like we need to start with the main event itself, COVID-19, otherwise known as coronavirus. There is just too much to talk about when it comes to COVID, so I've picked out some specifics, and I'd like to start with my favourite story to come out of COVID. Amidst a 3-week lockdown in India at the end of March, a woman gave birth to twins, which she then decided to name, wait for it, COVID and Corona. This woman named her 2 newborn children COVID and Corona. In an interview from the BBC, the woman said, and I quote, "We faced many challenges and me and my husband wanted to make the day memorable." As if it wasn't memorable already. You just gave birth to twins in a pandemic and you want to name them after the virus that everyone wants to forget about. If you don't believe me, Google it. It's a real story. Apparently, hospital staff started calling the babies COVID and Corona after they were born, which apparently led to the parents' decision to give them those names. Now, I'm not being funny, but if doctors and nurses are calling your kids COVID and Corona before you've named them that, that's not a good sign. They're essentially calling your kids a virus. Now, I know children can be unbearable at the best of times, but that's too far. Imagine the bullying they're going to get when they grow up, especially when COVID turns 19. Another effect, thanks to COVID, is millions of people have had to move their workspace into their home space. I am, of course, talking about working from home. Working from home. A lot of us have had to do it, including me. And thanks to working from home, we've seen a huge rise in Zoom calls and a huge decline in people wearing trousers on Zoom calls. But there are a trio of men out there trying to save us from damnation, and these 3 men are the strangest combination of blokes to save this country. This trio is Boris Johnson, Matt Hancock, and Chris Whitty. Johnson, Hancock, and Whitty. The strangest trio since Three Amigos was released in 1986. Chris Whitty, a man who has his own fan club, the Chris Whitty Appreciation Society. Google it if you don't believe me. Matt Hancock, the most socially awkward man to ever step foot on the planet. And Boris Johnson, a man who has not been introduced to a hairbrush. These 3 have been tasked to save us all from the threat of coronavirus. So, in summary, we're all screwed. I've got just enough time to mention one more thing about COVID. Now, do I talk about the vaccine? Or do I talk about Scotch eggs counting as a substantial meal? Obvious answer. That's right. Pubs in Tier 2 areas can now only serve alcohol with a substantial meal. Sources that I've just made up tell me that COVID knows when you're just having a drink, which makes you vulnerable to the virus. However, if you have a substantial meal, COVID has very kindly agreed to stay away and definitely not infect you, at least until the curfew when pubs have to close. Now, once the curfew begins, COVID is then allowed to enter the premises and get as many people as possible. A bit like Pac-Man, really. A Scotch egg counts as a substantial meal. Could Scotch eggs be some kind of deterrent to COVID? Should we all be carrying Scotch eggs around with us to protect us from the virus? Questions that need answers. But COVID isn't the only thing to take 2020 by storm. It is also the year where a certain celebrity couple were in the courts over accusations of abuse. Now, I've been told to take a neutral stance on this topic, as I'm not allowed to influence who I believe is right and who is wrong. I am, of course, talking about the wonderful Johnny Depp and that bitch Amber Heard. Back in 2018, aka the good old days when people could shake hands, kiss each other, and even spit in the face of their enemies, British newspaper The Sun named Johnny Depp a wife beater. Because of this, Johnny Depp took libel action against The Sun. This had to be the hottest thing from The Sun since page 3. But after a heavy court case, Depp lost and is now branded as an abuser. This has sparked outrage with the public, with justice for Johnny Depp trending, and people saying that they will be boycotting Aquaman 2 for keeping Amber Heard in the film. I mean, DC are used to disappointing people with their films, so this is no news to them. It has also recently been reported that Johnny has been fired from his role in the Fantastic Beasts franchise, and that he will no longer be able to reprise his role as Captain Jack Sparrow in any upcoming Pirates of the Caribbean. This news is almost as shocking as when Disney announced an all-female Pirates of the Caribbean film, but I'm sure that will be great. After all, an all-female reboot turned out great for Ghostbusters. Meanwhile, in the trigger-happy land of America, an election was brewing to find out which old-aged pensioner would be voted in to take care of a truly screwed-up country. Could it be Donald Trump, a 74-year-old businessman and the only man of colour in the US election this year? Or could it be Joe Biden, a 78-year-old man who could easily get a role as a zombie in The Walking Dead and not require any makeup? After a long count of electoral votes, the American public decided that they'd had enough of the annoying orange and wanted a political Clint Eastwood lookalike in the hot seat. But Donald Trump wasn't happy. Like a spoilt child not getting what he wants, he pulled a tantrum. Trump said he was taking this to the US Supreme Court, which is like a child telling their parents they're calling Childline because they didn't get a PS5 for Christmas. But in the end, he just had to suck it up and admit he's a sore loser. The most recent thing to happen in the United Kingdom is, of course, the tiering system. At the moment, we have tiers 1 to 4, with a fifth currently being discussed. Tier 1 being the most freeing, where you can go about your business close to normal. Tier 4 being stay at home, everything's closed, you can only go out for essentials. You'd have more fun in prison, if I'm honest. At least you get free meals there. It makes you wonder, how many more tiers can they do? We'll eventually end up in tier 12, where you can only go outside to put your bins out as long as you're wearing a face mask, hazmat suit, and fluffy slippers. Millions of people currently reside in tier 4 as we near the end of 2020. But what will the future hold for us? Will 2021 bring us happier times? Well, there's only one way to find out. Strap yourselves in and enjoy the ride, because no matter what happens in 2021, we're all in it together. Apart from Donald Trump and Amber Heard, they can go screw themselves.